Welcome back to another edition of the Saturday to Sunday Football Podcast. I am Paul Perdichizzi, and thank you for joining me as always. The college football playoff is set to kick off in just a few days. There is so much to break down over the last 2 weeks of college football, championship week, the Heisman Trophy, the playoffs being announced, and then the NFL landscape. 2 weeks have happened since I last been on air. A lot to talk about with the rookies, stock up, stock down, to kind of start to put a bow on the NFL regular season as well, with just a few weeks left. So let's jump right into it with the NFL draft report for this week. Talk about the latest buzz, my thoughts on the prospects you should most have your eyes on in terms of round one of the college football playoff, some declarations of people who've decided to declare for the NFL draft, announcements about who has officially decided to stay in college, lot to dissect there. So let's start first with, since we left last, the playoff picture had been set. Notre Dame got screwed. There was no way around it. Them to switch Miami over them after weeks of Notre Dame being ahead. They have to come up with a better system. They have to come up with a better procedure to not just on a whim make a change like this when neither of those two teams played in that past week. So that's my only really thoughts on that. Fernando Mendoza winning the Heisman. He's been a guy that I've been intrigued with since last summer. I started the year last year with Arch Manning at my number one quarterback, Lenora Sellers 2, and Fernando Mendoza 3. At this point, Fernando Mendoza has moved up to the top spot entering the 2026 NFL draft. Warranted for him to win that Heisman. Great statistical year. Led Indiana to the 1 seed and a great season. So I thought that was well deserved. In terms of the round one of the playoffs, obviously we know Indiana, Ohio State, Texas Tech, and Georgia are getting the byes in round one. Things that I have my eyes on from the first round of the college football playoffs, that Alabama-Oklahoma game really intrigues me because from a prospect perspective, we got two quarterbacks that we're talking about. Ty Simpson of Alabama, who could be a first-round pick if he declares, even though it's been a shakier second half of the year after some people thought he could have pushed his way into the top 5 or top 10. I think there's still a real possibility he goes back to school. If he comes out, could he push into the top 10? Yes, in a weak quarterback class, but I think he warrants more going in the early 20s, even potentially late first round or early second round. I look at him and I think, he's somewhere on that Mac Jones type spectrum, Kenny Pickett, Daniel Jones when he was coming out. I think that's the caliber of prospect Ty Simpson is. So I think he is less of a top 10 guy and more of a guy who I still see in that mid to late round one range, even if he gets a little bit of the quarterback bump. On the other side, John Mateer is an interesting prospect. We've been talking about him all year. He's a guy that if he was to declare, I could see him being a day 2 pick. Can he push his way into early round 2 consideration? Does he fall? We tend to sometimes see not a lot of quarterbacks go round 2. They usually either get pushed into round 1 or team passes and maybe takes a chance somewhere in round 3. Last year, we saw Tyler Shuck go early in round 2, but nobody else until Dylan Gabriel then at the end of round 3 after we had the guys in round 1. So I think Mateer could be a guy who's a day 2 quarterback prospect. So I think Simpson versus Mateer, very interesting between these two legacy college football programs in Alabama and Oklahoma. Other prospects I'm looking forward to watching are the 2 wide receivers that are draft eligible. On the Alabama side, you got Jeremy Bernard. I think he could easily be a top 50 pick somewhere as that wide receiver 6'7" to wide receiver 10 range. So I think he could be a day 2 pick for sure. I have him somewhere in that round 2 docket, middle to late round 2. And then the other side, Deion Burks, who I've been a fan of for a long time. I think he's on that round 3, round 4 cusp. I think he could be a very prolific inside slot wide receiver, but could also get vertical from inside the slot. I think a guy like Josh Downs, to me, is a very comparable player to a guy like Deion Burks. We've seen Wan'Dale Robinson have his best NFL season this year as well. I think Deion Burks can be somewhere in that Josh Downs to Wan'Dale Robinson type spectrum. So I am a fan of Deion Burks' game. That Miami, Texas A&M game, on the Miami side, again, we're still looking for other quarterbacks to maybe emerge. I think Carson Beck could be a day 3 prospect still. the days of him being a top 5 consideration, round 1 pick, those are long gone. But I still think Carson Beck has a shot to be a day 3 prospect. Interesting. A lot of eyes are going to be on that game with Miami. A lot of people thinking Miami shouldn't be in the college football playoff over Notre Dame. So it'll be interesting to kind of see how Carson Beck, who has struggled in big moments and has struggled with pressure, how does he handle this opportunity here to kind of bookmark his college career and see if he can get the W and advance in the playoff. On the other side, Casey Concepcion is the guy I'm really targeting. I think he's a guy who's on that round 1, round 2 border. I think he's more of probably an early to mid round 2 prospect, but I think he could be one of those guys that generates some buzz about maybe being a potential late round 1. I think he's more round 2, but he's a guy from Texas A&M that I have my eyes on. Tulane Ole Miss on the offensive skill prospect, I'm not really looking at anybody in particular in terms of matchups and that. I do think Ole Miss is going to win that game pretty heavily. And then the other game, the James Madison Oregon game, I do think Oregon will roll in that, but all eyes are on Dante Moore. And I think so much talk has been about him at the quarterback position this year. Is he going to declare? Is he going to return to school? For a while, it looked like he was going to go. Then a lot of buzz that he was going to go back to school. But now I feel like the tides are starting to turn. And you have Fernando Mendoza, who's going to be the first or top 5 pick, let's say, potentially QB1 in this class. But I think Dante Moore could be right in that mix too, as another guy in the top 5, top 10, that it's hard to go back to school when you already have that status. So I think when push comes to shove, Dante Moore is going to be in this draft class. And I think if he has a good college football playoff, a couple games here, I think that's only going to help solidify his stock as a guy who should come out, should declare, could be a top 10 pick. I just don't see the benefit of going back to school where he might not be that if things don't go as good this year. He's in position right now to be a top 10 pick in the NFL draft. I don't know for his purposes. I understand with the NIL money and stuff, there's more money in college than there's ever been before. But if the ultimate goal is maximizing your professional earnings and having a strong draft stock, I think he's going to take an opportunity. We know how fluid. Think about it. Garrett Nussmeier comes out last year. He's a top 10 pick in the NFL draft. He might be a Giant instead of Jackson Dart. He goes back to school. His draft stock has now been tanked. So there's always that risk. And then not even taking into account like the injury risk. So I do think there's a real possibility Dante Moore comes out and throws his name in the 2026 NFL draft. And if so, I think he's a top 5/top 10 pick and pushes Fernando Mendoza. I think some teams could even have him ahead of Mendoza, even though I do think Mendoza would be the guy who comes off the board first. Some other things, latest buzz out there. Lennar Sellers and Arch Manning going back to school. That's been kind of the writing on the wall for a while. No surprises there. No surprises with Jeremiah Love, Mekhi Lemon, and Jordan Tyson all declaring. Jeremiah Love, clear RB1, top 10 pick in the NFL draft. Mekhi Lemon, Jordan Tyson, 2 of the top 3 wide receivers. We'll add Carnell Tate to the mix there. I think those are the 3 wide receivers locked in this draft in terms of the top 3 wide receiver prospects. I think they'll all be off the board within the first 20 picks of the NFL draft. But I do think the biggest surprise name is Jadarian Price, Notre Dame's second running back, who there's been a lot of buzz that he was the RB2 in this class if he declared. I just didn't know if he was going to want to take the opportunity with Jeremiah Love leaving to be the guy and maybe even catapult his draft stock even higher. But if right now he's getting early day 2 grades, and there's a lot of big boards out there, I know it was Bleacher Report, another had him in the mid-30s. If he thinks that's where his NFL draft stock is and he could go in the early to mid portion of round 2, I don't know if he's got the physical traits to be a round 1 running back prospect. So if there's no possibility of him being a round 1 running back prospect in people's eyes, well, if he's got early to mid date round 2 draft capital, that's really good draft capital for a running back. It's a down running back class. So he might say, you know what? I'm going to go now. I'm going to be the RB2 in this class. And I'm gonna get taken somewhere between like pick 35 and say pick 50. If he goes anywhere in round 2, I think it's a smart investment for him to come out. I think it's Jeremiah Love, tier break, it's Jadarian Price, tier break, and then it's everybody else at the running back position in terms of the 2026 NFL draft. Some other guys stock up on a couple prospects we have not talked about much here on Saturday, Sunday. First one, we're talking running backs. Let's stay on the running back, and that's Mike Washington, the running back out of Arkansas, formerly out of Buffalo, then New Mexico State. I look at him as a guy who's going to have a day 3 draft grade, so I think he's somewhere in that round 4, round 5 mix. But that's where we're going to see guys like Katron Allen. That's where we're going to see guys like Nicholas Singleton. That's where I think we're going to see a guy like Jonah Coleman. So the fact that Mike Washington could be looked at as a top 10 back in this class, I think is a good value for his draft stock, and it is definitely rising. A guy who, before the year started, would not have been on many top 10, top 15 running back boards, would have had a UDFA grade or a late round running back grade, and now he's put himself in the mix to be a round 4, round 5 prospect in the 2026 NFL draft. The quarterback position, two names I'm going to mention that I have not talked about. One is Cole Payton, the quarterback out of North Dakota State, dual threat quarterback, 6'2", 230. High traits player, right? We know these guys intrigue. It's why if Lenora Sellers came out, he still would have been a top 10 pick. Payton's got an opportunity to be a really interesting guy that a team looks at, maybe late round 3, but probably early day 3, makes an investment in him and kind of tries to develop him as that guy who, if you season him right, he's got the physical traits, he's got the athleticism, he's got the dual threat ability. You could see him as a guy who could become a backup quarterback with intriguing upside to maybe become a starter down the line. So he's a name that's generating some buzz, but no quarterback is generating more buzz that we haven't talked about more than Duke quarterback Darian Menza. The redshirt sophomore, 6'3", 205. This past year, 30 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, 67.9 completion percentage. He's a pocket passing quarterback, but he checks off a lot of boxes in terms of size, frame, arm talent. He's a guy who I think he was number 5 on Mel Kiper's current quarterback big board. He's a guy that could put himself in the mix. That if we have just Mendoza, what if Ty Simpson goes back to school? What if Dante Moore goes back to school? All of a sudden, QB2 is open in this draft class. And I think Darian Menza and John Mateer would be the 2 guys that would then be in the running if everybody went back to school. Even if we play it out that Simpson and Dante Moore come out. Okay, Dante Moore is going top 5, top 10, not that far behind Fernando Mendoza. Ty Simpson's probably going somewhere in round 1. Who's to say Mensa can't be the 4th quarterback? Early round 2 or something like that. So there's a path for him to be QB4/5 or QB2/3, depending on who comes out. So he's young, redshirt sophomore. Does he go back to school? I think it's to be determined, because I really do think there's a pathway for him to be a top 50 pick in this draft class. And he might, again, look at this as, this is my best opportunity to be attached to some draft capital. If next year's draft class is going to be much stronger at the quarterback position, I could see my stock drop. Do I go out? If he goes out, I think that's going to add a lot of intrigue. I have not done a deep dive on him yet. I'm going to save that to know if he's coming out. If he's coming out in this draft class, I will do a deep dive on him to really get a feel for his game completely. What I've seen just from watching broadcast tapes and just watching on the TV coverage, he's an interesting player. He's got some intrigue. He's got some physical traits that I think check off a lot of boxes. So I think he's a player on the rise. Katron Allen is another guy who, like, last year at this time, I would have said, you know what, he's taking him to be like a round 6, round 7 type player. I think he's now put himself in the mix to be the first senior running back. Could be an early day 3 pick. Could go ahead of his teammate Nicholas Singleton. You're looking for that north-south, power gap running back between the tackles. I think that could be Katron Allen. I think stock is definitely up on him right now to be an early day 3 prospect. Jacoby Lane, the wide receiver at USC, he also declared. I'm not as high on him as some people, but I still think he's a solid day 2 prospect. I would put him more probably in the round 3 mix than round 2, but great ball skills, great length, catch radius, ability to adjust. Chris Bell, a guy who I thought had a real chance to go round 1 as the 4th or 5th or 6th best wide receiver in this draft class. The news came out that he tore his ACL. Let's see what that does to his draft stock. I still think these guys are coming back quicker than ever. I still think Bell could make it into the top 100, maybe as a round 3 prospect. And then one small school wide receiver of note that I think is generating a lot of buzz is Ted Hurst out of Georgia State. 6'3", 195. He's got good athleticism and speed. He's a 4-4 type player. He's got good footwork, ability to high point, great length and catch radius. I think he's on that late round 3 to through round 4 buzz. So a guy from a smaller school, I think, is seeing his stock climb. So a couple guys generating buzz there. Ted Hurst I talked about, Mike Washington, Darian Mensah. Broke down some guys declaring, going back to school. No real surprises there. I think Price officially coming out was probably the biggest surprise we saw so far, but not that surprising when he already had, day 2 type grades attached to his name at the running back position. Let's turn this over to the Sunday game. And let's start with, now again, I haven't done a rookie report in 2 weeks. So things that popped off the page at me over the last 2 weeks. Jackson Dart back from his missed games due to concussion the last 2 weeks. Not being called to run as much, but even when he's not being called design runs, it's just so much a part of his game. This past week, the Giants game against Washington, he had 63 yards rushing. They really didn't call many design runs, maybe 1 or 2, but just in the natural flow of the game, you're still going to see Jackson Dart be impactful with the legs. On top of that, good decision making, quick release. I think when he gets back his full repertoire of weapons, if the Giants add a wide receiver in the top 5 or add one in the top of round 2 on top of Malik Neighbors returning, they'll hopefully have Cam Scatterbu back next year, and then hopefully they re-sign Wan'Dale Robinson. It's going to be fun to kind of see Jackson Dart if they get the right coach in there and he gets some weapons and he gets Neighbors back. We could really see him take off next year. We've already seen him elevate some of teammates around him. I still am very bullish on what I've seen from Jackson Dart this year in really not good, surrounding environment, coaching issues, playmaker, lack of playmakers around him. And Dart has still had together a really, really solid rookie year. We saw the best and the worst of Shedeur Sanders over the last 2 weeks. 2 weeks ago, we saw him go for 364 and 3. This past week, 177 yards and 3 interceptions. I think he's a young player. He's developing. I'm glad that Cleveland's going to give him the rest of the year to kind of assess what they have in him. Listen, we've already talked about this. This might not be the class to get your quarterback. So a team like Cleveland with Shedeur, a team like New Orleans with Tyler Shuck, who the last 2 weeks, 144 yards, 0 touchdowns, and 1 interception 1 week. Last past week, 272 and 1 touchdown. The week before did have a lot of stuff on the ground. I think found the end zone twice as well. So found a way to be productive. But he's in another situation with the Saints. It is a real possibility they might not, if Cleveland can't get Mendoza and New Orleans can't get Mendoza and Moore goes back to school, there's not going to be a lot of quarterbacks near the top of that draft. So there's a possibility Shedeur Sanders and or Tyler Shuck, the way they play the remainder of this season, it could catapult them and springboard him to get an opportunity to still be the starter next year. So I will have my eyes on those 2 quarterbacks in those situations moving forward to conclude the NFL season. Cam Ward, you see those bits and pieces, right? And that's what they are right now, bits and pieces. 14 of 28, 117 yards and 2 touchdowns 1 week, 18 of 29, 170 and 2 touchdowns. So 4 touchdowns in the last 2 weeks, starting to build on that momentum a little bit. I think the whole offseason, the Titans have to focus on 3 things: better O-line, better run game, better receivers. They need to put all in place for Cam Ward to try to get the best out of him in year 2. Still believe he's got the physical traits to materialize into that. But if we are looking back at it, I don't think there's a scenario right now where you can say if we were redrafting the 2025 NFL draft that Jackson Dart would not be QB1 over Cam Ward. I think most people would agree with that at this point based on what we've seen. We'll see if that changes, especially when Tennessee, improves their supporting cast, but it was not like Jackson Dart was really working with a strong supporting cast. So I put them pretty comparable, and we've seen Dart be better this year. Does that mean that's indefinitely? No, but I do think if we did a redraft, most people would have Jackson Dart ahead of Cam Ward in terms of their redraft of the 2025 NFL draft. At the running back position, Travion Henderson continues his strong finish to the season, 148 yards and 2 touchdowns against the Buffalo Bills this past week. Henderson is now materializing that from that rookie class. We have Genty, we have Hampton, we have Henderson, we have Judkins. I think it's up for grabs the way they come off the board next year in redraft, the way they, in terms of dynasty, how they go into their first offseason. I think there's going to be a lot of discussion about those running backs and how they should be ranked. Omarion Hampton back in the mix the past 2 weeks, 15 carries and 13 carries, 56 and 61 yards, respectfully, sharing the backfield right now with Kamani Vidal, who played really well when Hampton was gone. But it's nice to see Hampton back out there. We'll see how he finishes the year in terms of those performances as well. Let's take this to the wide receivers. Luther Burden is the name really I wanted to talk about. He has finally seen the field as a much more consistent part of the wide receiver, depth chart in terms of getting on the field. 6 catches, 84 yards, 4 for 67 each of the past 2 weeks. Routes per yards per route has been phenomenal this year. You see bits and pieces of his big play ability. I will continue to harp on buy Luther Burden now, buy Luther Burden as soon as trading becomes available, buy Luther Burden aggressively in the offseason. I still think there's a possibility. I know how good Egbuka looked earlier in the year. Ted McMillan has had his moments this year of greatness. We'll see about Travis Hunter. He was coming on before his injury. But again, I've been saying this since the draft weekend. You fast forward a couple years. If Luther Burden is the best wide receiver in this draft class, would I be that surprised? The answer is no. And I think Ben Johnson is starting to see what he brings to the table. And even if this year doesn't close with a big Luther Burden explosion or breakout, I think it's coming, and it's coming next year. So go buy Luther Burden. I will continue to harp on that. In terms of the rookie tight ends, we'll stick with Luther Burden's teammate. Loveland this past week, 4 catches, 63 yards. The week before, 4 catches, 29 yards, and 1 touchdown. Colson Loveland, another guy. If people aren't valuing him as a top 5 dynasty tight end, maybe not the level of McBride, Bowers, Tyler Warren, he should be right after those guys. So Colson Loveland, I still think you can make the case that Colson Loveland still could end up being a better player than Tyler Warren, which is the way a lot of people had it leading into the 2025 NFL draft. Harold Fannin, I can't wait to see Harold Fannin next year as the clear tight end starter there if they get upgraded quarterback position. But, he just keeps producing. 8 catches, 114 yards and a touchdown, 7 catches and 48 yards. So those are his stats from the past 2 weeks. This is a guy who's got 80 to 100 catch upside at the tight end position. We've seen him put up a monster production in college. He's been able to translate way quicker than I thought. I had some separation and athleticism concerns. It is not materialized at all. He is doing exactly what he did in college. It is translated to the pro game, and we've seen him be really productive over the last couple of weeks and anytime this year that he's gotten a real opportunity. And then I'll keep beating this drum as well. Gunnar Helm. You can get him for dirt cheap. 4 catches, 49 yards, and a touchdown. He split in a ton of time with Chigakonkwo. But I think when they eventually look through this year and they go into next year, I think Gunnar Helm is going to be their clear starting tight end, play 70%, 75% of snaps. And I think there's some sneaky early to mid tight end 2 value if that ends up materializing. I think Gunnar Helm was a better prospect than Brenton Strange. We've seen how productive Brenton Strange has been. I think Gunnar Helm could be that type of player, if not better. So Gunnar Helm, cheap dynasty buy in the offseason. Luther Burden, aggressively buy, even if it costs you your first round rookie pick. Unless it's one of your like a top 5, I would use the pick to get Luther Burden on my roster. Travion Henderson, I think now in the mix of, is he going into year 2? Is he the best rookie running back from this class? I think it's going to be a conversation. You have him, you have Genty, you have Hampton, you have Judkins. Scott will be back next year. But it'll be a real conversation about whether or not Travion Henderson warrants being the best back in terms of your dynasty rankings after their rookie season. And then let's wrap this up tonight with a Dynasty Fantasy Report. Not a lot to talk about, but a couple things I did want to make note of. Stock up, I have 1 running back, stock up. 2 running backs, sorry. One is Blake Corum. When the Rams drafted Jarquez Hunter and all the buzz was how much they liked him and how high, and he was on their radar that they wanted to get him on day 3. A lot of people, myself included, took that as they were unhappy with Blake Corum. And I think a lot of people post-draft thought that Hunter was going to get the guy to start to work in the Kyron Williams's opportunities. But it has been Blake Corum. And they have basically had a 50-50 split at times over the last couple of weeks. So I'm going to say stock up on Blake Corum. I know Kyron Williams is there. He signed an extension. He's going to be there for a couple of years. But if they're really going to split opportunities, there's going to be value for Blake Corum to be an RB3/flex, some weeks in RB2. If Kyron Williams goes down, league winner. So I think stock up on Blake Corum. I think he's an interesting dynasty buy because maybe in a year from now that, they let it play out and Corum's a better running back. I think it'll be very much a timeshare next year. But if Corum starts to be clearly the better back, I think he will start to take the lead in that committee. And that is not how his dynasty value is looked at right now. So I'm going to say buy Blake Corum. I'm also going to say stock up on Travis Etienne. Bashal Tutin might end the year injured and not play anymore, but we've seen Travis Etienne be really good at times this year. He's a free agent. Maybe Jacksonville brings him back with the way things broke. I didn't think that was in the cards before the last 4 or 5 weeks. But I do think he's shown enough this year, and it's such a down running back draft class. Besides Jeremiah Love, and maybe they'll look at Jadarian Price to be a part of a committee, teams that want to upgrade at the running back position are going to go to the free agency route. You have a Travis Etienne, you have a Tyler Algier. So if he gets paid, relatively speaking, for a running back, he's going to be put in a situation where I think he's going to be given every opportunity to be an integral part of an offense, even if it's not Jacksonville. So stock up on Blake Corum, buy now. Stock up on Travis Etienne, less concerned about the free agency than I was a couple weeks ago. The quarterback position, nothing really want to talk about except Tua bench this week. We'll see the long-term ramifications about that in terms of next year. And Patrick Mahomes tearing his ACL, absolute bummer. We'll see if he can be ready for week 1 of the NFL season next year. If there's issues, if there's delay, and he's losing out of the season, that starts to really significantly alter fantasy outlook as well. At the tight end position, I mean, when you put up one of the greatest tight end weeks of all time, 11 catches, 166 yards, and 3 touchdowns, there's nowhere to say except stock up on Kyle Pitts. But the thing that we've seen, especially since Kirk Cousins got under center and how much opportunities, Kyle Pitts is only 25 years old. And maybe he'll never live up to the draft stock that saw him go, in Jamar Chase territory. But he's 25 years old. We've seen a great rookie year from him, and at times we've seen he's never collected targets as much, especially if they've been fully healthy. But we see a performance like this, and you realize why he was taken. There are so few tight ends in football. Forget about the 3 touchdowns. That's kind of the cherry on top. But there are so few tight ends in football that can put up a stat line of 11 catches for 166 yards. It is very few people. But Kyle Pitts did it. So I think that opens the door where whether the Falcons franchise tag him, which I think is a possibility now considering the tag's not that high, whether they find a way to keep him, even though I feel like he had kind of worn out his welcome until recently, or the more likely scenario is another team pays big money for him. And they look at him as an offensive weapon, a guy who could be the second or third option in the passing game. So he's going to get paid. And he's only 25, and he's shown glimpses of greatness. People still have a sour taste in their mouth about Kyle Pitts, myself included. I needed a tight end in one of my dynasty leagues a couple weeks back after I lost Tucker Kraft, and I easily had the opportunity for the same exact trade package to get Dallas Goedert or Kyle Pitts. And I went Dallas Goedert because I was a win-now team, and I thought it was the right play. And I think Goddard still could be productive next year. We'll see if he's in Philadelphia. But in hindsight, for Dynasty, if I wasn't a contender, I probably should have went Pitts. Maybe even as a contender, I should have went Pitts because I think moving forward, there's still possibility of him stringing together a whole bunch of years where he's still a top 10 Dynasty tight end asset. He wasn't there a few weeks ago. He wasn't there when the year started. But there's still a lot of upside where he can get back to that. And then at the wide receiver position, stock up on these 3 players. Jaden Reed's back. Still think he's the best all-around wide receiver. I think Christian Watson is the best vertical threat and best after the catch. But in terms of inside-outside versatility, jet sweeps, manufactured touches, win in the short to intermediate to vertical game, I think that's Jayden Reed. Marcus Golden didn't really seize the moment this year. Not ready to give up on him. But I think Jayden Reed being back, showing that versatility, he's buried in dynasty rankings right now. So I would say buy Jayden Reed, especially if you can get him where he's currently looked at. Zay Flowers. I think every time I watch Zay Flowers, I'm blown away at how good he is. But sometimes the production, the stat sheet doesn't match, and the impact he makes on the game does not show up always fully in the scorebook, the box score, the fantasy stats. But I think Zay Flowers is going to put together a year sooner rather than later where he catches like 100 passes for like 1,300 yards and like 8 to 10 touchdowns. And I know that Ravens offense, sometimes the passing, it's volatile, right? We understand that. But I think Zay Flowers is a guy who's just a rock solid wide receiver 2, maybe low, but still right there. And sometimes I think you can probably get him for cheaper than that. And he's not valued as much by other people. So I'm going to say stock up on Zay Flowers, buy Zay Flowers. And then at this point, what Michael Wilson's been doing, I don't think you can put that back in the bottle. I don't think you can put the toothpaste back in the bottle. He's just been too good. And I know when that one week that Marvin Harrison Jr. came back and he was being more the focal point, I get all that. But Michael Wilson was barely even looked at as a worthy of a roster spot in the dynasty leagues not that long ago. Now, is he going to go into the offseason as a top 36 dynasty wide receiver? I think it's possible. Especially since I don't think Kyler Murray will be there. Whether they get somebody else, whether they bring back Jacoby Brissett, whatever their situation looks like next year, I think the passing volume and the passing production will be better than it was with Kyler Murray. And I think even if Marvin Harrison develops into a really good wide receiver, there might be enough for Michael Wilson to still be a wide receiver 3, and maybe even better than that. I mean, maybe in the NFL, he's just better than Marvin Harrison Jr. Like, I don't think it's inconceivable what we've seen from Michael Wilson over the last couple of weeks. It hasn't been 1 or 2 fluky games. It's been building and building week in and week out. So it's impossible not to say stock up on him as well. So there it is, guys. Dynasty Fantasy Report following week 15 of the NFL season. NFL Rookie Report talking about the rookies over the last couple weeks. And then the NFL Draft Report, playoff preview, latest buzz, stock up on some relatively unknown prospects. Some people declaring going back to school, talking about the landscape of the 2026 NFL Draft. If you're enjoying this content, please get over to the website, SS Football, fastest and easiest way to get there. Check out our premium content tab, and you get all 3 notebooks for $9.99. Over the next couple of weeks, there will be tremendous amounts of updates to the scouting notebook. Got to change a whole lot. Most of those scouting reports were before the season started. Got to update a lot of those scouting reports, add new people into the mix, update the draft projections. You will see full-fledged updates to the scouting notebook. The rankings notebook has pretty much been kept up to date throughout the year. Do got to do some changes, though, over the last 2 weeks. But those will be updated. The scouting notebook will really be updated over the next couple of weeks. And then continue to be updated in the entire pre-draft process. And then you get the rankings, you get the draft projections notebook in April as well. Please, if you've purchased it in the past but haven't purchased it this year, please consider purchasing it sooner rather than later to help us out. If you've been a long-time listener but never purchased it, please consider every single dime I get from there goes right back into everything we need to continue to do what we do here at Saturday, Sunday. So if you could help us out, it would be greatly appreciated. So on behalf of our sound tech engineer, David Nicano, and myself, happy holidays to everyone. Enjoy round 1 of the playoffs. And I look forward next time taking you from Saturday to Sunday.